It started with a song. A lullaby, soft and sweet, the same one my mother, Sharon, used to sing to me. But this time, it wasn't her voice. It was a ghost, a memory, a phantom limb of a life I was forced to forget. The melody snaked its way into my dream, coiling around me, squeezing the air from my lungs. I was 16 again, lying on a cold table, the fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzing overhead. My mother's face, a mask of grim determination, loomed over me. "It's for the best, Chloe," she'd said, her voice as sterile as the room. "You're too young. This will ruin your life." I woke up gasping, the phantom pain in my abdomen a dull, familiar ache. My husband, Ethan, stirred beside me, his arm tightening around my waist. "You okay?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I nodded, my heart still pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Just a bad dream," I whispered, the lead tasting like ash in my mouth. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell anyone. The secret was a cancer, eating away at me from the inside out, but it was a secret I had to keep. My mother had made sure of that. Sharon was a master of control, a puppeteer pulling the strings of my life. She was a single mother, a nurse, a pillar of our small Midwest community. To everyone else, she was a saint, a woman who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. But I knew the truth. Her love was a cage, her sacrifice is a debt I could never repay. From the moment I was born, she had wrapped her life around mine, a suffocating embrace that left no room for me to breathe. Every decision, every friendship, every dream was subject to her approval. And when I had dared to defy her, to fall in love with a boy she deemed unworthy, she had taken the ultimate step to bring me back in line. She had forced me to have an abortion, or so I thought. That was the story she had told me, the lie that had haunted me for a decade. The truth I would later discover was far more sinister. But for now, I was living in the carefully constructed reality she had created for me. I had escaped her grasp, or so I believed. I had moved to New York for college, met Ethan, a kind, loving man who knew nothing of my dark past, and built a life for myself, a life that was finally my own. But the ghost of that day in the clinic still lingered, a constant reminder of the price of my freedom. Now, I was pregnant again. This time, it was different. This time, I was a grown woman, a wife, a soon-to-be mother. This time, I was determined to do things my way. But the fear was still there, a cold knot in the pit of my stomach. How could I be a good mother when my own mother was a monster? How could I protect my child from the woman who had tried to destroy me? I knew I had to tell her. I couldn't keep this from her forever. But the thought of that conversation, of the inevitable drama and manipulation, filled me with a paralyzing dread. I could already hear her voice, dripping with false concern, her words a carefully crafted web of guilt and obligation. "A baby, Chloe? Are you sure you're ready for that? You know how difficult you were as a child?" I pushed the thought away, focusing on the feel of Ethan's hand on my growing belly. This was my baby, my family, my life. I would not let her ruin this for me. I would not let her turn this joyous occasion into another chapter of her twisted narrative. I would be strong. I would be brave. I would be the mother I never had. But as I lay there in the pre-dawn stillness, the ghost of that lullaby still echoing in my ears, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice. The past was a shadow, and it was getting longer. And I knew with a chilling certainty that it was only a matter of time before it caught up with me. The move to New York City had been my declaration of independence, a desperate flight from the suffocating embrace of my mother's love. I'd chosen a university hundreds of miles away, a place where the concrete canyons and endless anonymity promised a freedom I'd only ever dreamed of. The first few months were a dizzying blur of new experiences, bustling streets, late-night study sessions, and the exhilarating taste of making my own choices. I thrived in the absence of Sharon's constant scrutiny, shedding the skin of the timid, controlled girl I'd been in the Midwest. It was in a cramped, bustling coffee shop, amidst the scent of roasted beans and the murmur of 1,000 conversations, that I met Ethan. He was a fellow student, an aspiring architect with kind eyes and a laugh that could chase away the shadows. Our connection was immediate, a quiet understanding that blossomed into something profound. With Ethan, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. He didn't try to fix me or control me. He simply loved me, flaws and all. We built a life together in our tiny apartment, a sanctuary filled with shared dreams and whispered secrets. But one secret, the deepest and darkest, remained locked away in the vault of my heart. Then came the morning sickness, the inexplicable fatigue, the undeniable truth staring back at me from a small plastic stick. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, a mix of terror and exhilarating hope. This was different. This was our baby, Ethan's and mine. A chance to rewrite the narrative, to build a family free from the ghosts of my past. But the fear, a primal, visceral dread, still clawed at me. How could I tell Sharon? How could I face the woman who had already stolen one future from me? I agonized for weeks, the growing life within me a constant reminder of the impending confrontation. Ethan, sensing my unease, was patient and loving, but I couldn't bring myself to confide in him about the abortion. How could I explain the depth of my mother's manipulation, the way she had twisted my reality? He knew Sharon was overbearing, had witnessed her passive-aggressive phone calls and thinly veiled criticisms during our infrequent visits home, but he couldn't possibly comprehend the trauma that lay beneath. Finally, with Ethan by my side, I made the call. My voice trembled as I delivered the news, bracing myself for the storm. I expected tears, accusations, a torrent of guilt-tripping. What I got instead was a stunned silence, followed by a choked sob that sounded suspiciously like joy. "Oh, Chloe, a baby, my grandchild?" Sharon's voice, usually laced with subtle judgment, was now brimming with an almost unsettling warmth. "This is wonderful news. When are you due? Have you picked out names?" "I'll come visit, of course. I'll help you with everything." Her reaction was so utterly unexpected, so completely contrary to the Sharon I knew, that it threw me off balance. I stammered through the details, my mind reeling. Was this a new tactic? A more insidious form of control? Or had she, against all odds, actually changed? Ethan, sensing the shift in my demeanor, squeezed my hand reassuringly. He looked genuinely happy, relieved that the conversation hadn't devolved into the usual maternal melodrama. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this baby would be the bridge, the thing that finally healed the chasm between us. Maybe this time her love wouldn't feel like a weapon. Sharon began calling more frequently, but instead of her usual interrogations, she offered unsolicited advice on prenatal vitamins, baby gear, and nursery decor. She even sent a lavish gift basket filled with organic baby clothes and a hand-knitted blanket. It was all so normal, too normal. A tiny, nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered that this was merely the calm before the storm, but I desperately wanted to believe in this new, softer Sharon. Ethan was ecstatic, convinced that my mother had finally come around. He saw her newfound enthusiasm as a sign of genuine love, a desire to be a part of our growing family. I tried to see it through his eyes, to let go of the bitterness and suspicion that had become so ingrained in me. For the sake of my baby, for the sake of my marriage, I wanted to believe. We decided to get married before the baby arrived, a small, intimate ceremony in a New York park. Sharon flew in, beaming and even offered to pay for a significant portion of the wedding expenses. She was charming, gracious, and surprisingly subdued. She made a heartfelt toast, speaking of the joys of motherhood and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, and for a terrifying moment, I wondered if I had misjudged her all along. Had I been too harsh? Too unforgiving? Had my own pain blinded me to her genuine attempts at reconciliation? The doubts gnawed at me, a subtle poison seeping into the fragile peace I had found. I watched her interact with Ethan's family, effortlessly charming them with her stories and warmth, and a part of me longed for that version of her, the one everyone else saw. The one who wasn't a monster. As my pregnancy progressed, Sharon's calls became a daily ritual. She'd ask about my cravings, my doctor's appointments, the baby's movements. She even offered to come stay with us for a few weeks after the birth, an offer I hesitantly accepted, swayed by Ethan's insistence that it would be a huge help. "She's trying, Chloe," he'd said, his eyes full of hope. "Give her a chance." I wanted to. I truly did. I wanted to believe that the past was behind us, that we could forge a new, healthier relationship. But every now and then, a flicker of the old Sharon would emerge, a pointed comment about my weight, a subtle dig at my choice of baby names, a thinly veiled suggestion that I wasn't eating enough organic vegetables. These moments were fleeting, easily dismissed by Ethan as typical motherly concern, but they sent a shiver down my spine. They were tiny cracks in the facade, hints of the control that still lay dormant beneath the surface. I tried to focus on the positive, on the excitement of becoming a mother. I decorated the nursery, attended birthing classes, and devoured every parenting book I could get my hands on. Ethan was my rock, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. We were a team, ready to embark on this incredible journey together. But even in my happiest moments, a shadow lingered. The memory of that clinic, the sterile smell, the cold table, the lie. It was a wound that refused to heal, a constant reminder that my mother was capable of anything. And as my due date approached, a sense of unease settled over me, a premonition that this fragile piece was about to shatter. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every phone call, scrutinizing every text from Sharon. Was she truly supportive, or was this an elaborate trap? The thought was paranoid, I knew, but the years of her manipulation had left deep scars. I confided in my best friend, Sarah, about my anxieties, carefully omitting the most painful details of my past. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, advised caution. "It's great she's being supportive, Chloe, but don't forget who you're dealing with. Protect your peace, and more importantly, protect your baby." Her words resonated with me, a stark reminder that while hope was a beautiful thing, vigilance was a necessity. I resolved to set firm boundaries, to not let Sharon's newfound enthusiasm overshadow my own instincts. This baby, this new life, was mine to protect, and I would do whatever it took to ensure its well-being, even if it meant confronting the very woman who had given me life. As the final weeks of my pregnancy dwindled, the tension in our apartment grew palpable. Sharon was due to arrive any day, and with her impending arrival, my carefully constructed walls began to crumble. I found myself snapping at Ethan, retreating into myself, haunted by nightmares of my past. He tried to reassure me, to remind me of all the progress we had made, but his words felt hollow. He hadn't lived through what I had. He hadn't felt the crushing weight of her control, the insidious way she could twist love into a weapon. I knew deep down that this fragile truce wouldn't last. The old Sharon was still there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for her moment to strike. And I was terrified of what would happen when she finally did. My water broke in the middle of the night, a sudden gush that sent us scrambling. The ride to the hospital was a blur of contractions and Ethan's reassuring words. But even amidst the pain and excitement, a part of me dreaded the inevitable. Sharon would be here soon, and with her, the battle for my baby's soul would begin. Our daughter, Lily, arrived after a long, arduous labor, a tiny, perfect bundle of joy who instantly stole our hearts. Holding her in my arms, all the fear and anxiety melted away, replaced by an overwhelming surge of love. This was what I had fought for, what I had endured. This was my future, a future I would protect with every fiber of my being. Sharon arrived the next day, her arms laden with gifts, her face wreathed in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She cooed over Lily, showering her with kisses and compliments, but her gaze kept darting to me, a possessive glint in their depths. "She's so beautiful, Chloe," she said, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Just like you. But you look so tired, dear. Let me take her. You need your rest." And just like that, the facade began to crack. The subtle suggestions, the thinly veiled criticisms, the insidious attempts to undermine my authority as a mother, they all began anew, more relentless and suffocating than ever before. The battle for Lily had begun, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this time I wouldn't back down. It's strange how these dark family secrets connect us. If this story is getting under your skin, subscribe for more real family exposés. The first few weeks with Lily were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Sharon, true to her word, had moved in, ostensibly to help. But her help quickly morphed into a subtle yet relentless campaign to undermine my every decision. If I breastfed, she'd suggest formula for better sleep. If I used disposable diapers, she'd lament the environmental impact and extol the virtues of cloth. Every choice I made as a new mother was met with a thinly veiled critique, a knowing glance, or a story about how she had done things differently, and of course, better. Ethan, caught in the crossfire, tried to mediate, but Sharon was a master manipulator. She'd play the doting grandmother, showering Lily with affection, only to turn to me with a saccharine smile and a passive-aggressive remark about my parenting skills. "Oh, Chloe, darling, are you sure Lily isn't a little chilly in that outfit?" She'd coo, wrapping Lily in an extra blanket despite the warm room. "When you were a baby, I always made sure you were bundled up. You were such a delicate little thing." The implication was clear. I was neglecting my child just as I had been a delicate, needy burden. The constant barrage chipped away at my confidence, leaving me exhausted and resentful. I found myself second-guessing every instinct, every decision. Was I a bad mother? Was she right? The insidious doubt began to take root. Ethan, bless his heart, tried to defend me, but Sharon had a way of turning his words against him. "Oh, Ethan, you're such a wonderful husband, always standing up for your wife," she'd say, her voice dripping with false admiration. "But Chloe and I, we have a special bond, a mother-daughter understanding. You wouldn't comprehend the nuances." She created a wedge between us, subtly isolating me, making me feel like I was going crazy. Our once solid relationship began to fray under the relentless pressure. Arguments became more frequent, fueled by my exhaustion and his frustration. He saw her as a well-meaning, if overbearing mother. I saw her as a predator circling her prey. One evening, after a particularly draining day of Sharon's unsolicited advice and veiled criticisms, I broke down. "I can't do this, Ethan," I sobbed into his shoulder. "She's destroying me. She's destroying us." He held me tight, his own frustration evident in the stiffness of his embrace. "I know, babe. I see it. But she's your mom. What do you want me to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What could I do? I tried to set boundaries, to talk to her, but it was like talking to a brick wall. She would feign hurt, shed a few crocodile tears, and then resume her campaign with renewed vigor. The breaking point came during Lily's first doctor's appointment. Sharon insisted on coming, claiming she wanted to be supportive. But in the examination room, she interrupted the pediatrician, questioned his recommendations, and offered her own, often outdated, medical advice. "Dr. Miller, are you sure about that vaccine schedule? When Chloe was a baby, we waited until they were much older. And that formula? My goodness, the ingredients are just dreadful. I have a wonderful organic recipe I used for Chloe. The doctor, a kind, patient man, looked increasingly uncomfortable. I was mortified. Later, he pulled me aside, his voice gentle but firm. Chloe, your mother's interference is making it difficult for me to provide the best care for Lily. You need to decide who is in charge of your daughter's health. That night, I confronted Sharon. Mom, you have to stop, I said, my voice trembling but firm. Lily is my daughter. Ethan and I are her parents. We make the decisions about her care. Sharon's face crumpled. How can you say that, Chloe? I'm only trying to help. I only want what's best for my granddaughter. After all I've done for you. The familiar litany of guilt began, but this time it didn't work. Something inside me had snapped. I was no longer the timid teenager, afraid to defy her. I was a mother protecting her child. No, Mom, I interrupted, my voice gaining strength. You're not helping. You're suffocating us. You're driving a wedge between Ethan and me. You're making me question every single thing I do. And I won't let you do that to Lily. Her eyes narrowed, the mask of hurt replaced by a flash of cold anger. You ungrateful child. After everything, I sacrificed my life for you. I gave up everything. She paused, her gaze sweeping over our small apartment, a sneer forming on her lips. And look at you now. A tiny apartment, a struggling husband, and a baby you can barely manage. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? You think you escaped? Her words stung, but they also ignited a spark of defiance. I did escape, Mom, I said, my voice steady. And I'm not going back. You need to leave. You can't stay here anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Sharon stared at me, her mouth agape, as if she couldn't comprehend what I had just said. Then, a slow, chilling smile spread across her face. Oh, Chloe, you really think you've escaped, don't you? You think you know everything. She chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. There's so much you don't know, my dear. So much I've protected you from. Her words hung in the air, a sinister promise of untold secrets. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. What was she talking about? What else could there be? Ethan, who had been listening in stunned silence, stepped forward. Sharon, what are you talking about? What secrets? Sharon merely smiled, a knowing, almost triumphant glint in her eyes. Oh, you'll find out soon enough, dear. You both will. She packed her bags that night, her departure as dramatic as her arrival. But as she left, her parting words echoed in my mind, a chilling premonition of the storm to come. You think you're free, Chloe? You're not? You never will be. Not as long as my secret lives. Her departure brought a fragile peace to our home, but it was a peace built on a foundation of unease. Her words had planted a seed of doubt, a gnawing suspicion that there was more to my past than I knew. I tried to dismiss it, to focus on Lily and rebuilding my relationship with Ethan. But the seed had taken root, and it began to sprout, its tendrils reaching into the darkest corners of my memory. I started having nightmares again, not of the clinic, but of fragmented images, a blurred face, a whispered conversation, a sense of profound loss that I couldn't quite place. I felt like I was on the verge of remembering something crucial, something that had been deliberately hidden from me. I confided in Sarah, my best friend, about Sharon's cryptic remarks. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, suggested I dig into my past to try and find answers. She's clearly trying to mess with your head, Chloe, Sarah said, her brow furrowed with concern. But maybe there's a kernel of truth in what she's saying. You deserve to know. The idea terrified me. What if I uncovered something even more painful than the abortion? What if the truth shattered the fragile peace I had fought so hard to build? But the alternative, living with this gnawing uncertainty, was becoming unbearable. I started with old photo albums, poring over faded pictures of my childhood, searching for clues. I found nothing. Then I remembered my grandparents, Sharon's parents. They had always been a source of quiet support, a refuge from Sharon's intensity. I called my grandmother, her voice a comforting balm. I carefully broached the subject of my early childhood, asking if there was anything she remembered, anything unusual. My grandmother hesitated, then, with a sigh, she began to speak. She told me about my early months, how I had had a sickly baby requiring constant care. But then she mentioned something else, something that sent a jolt through me. Your mother, she was so distraught when you were born, Chloe. She almost gave you up. My blood ran cold. Gave me up? What do you mean, Grandma? My grandmother's voice dropped to a whisper. She was so young, so overwhelmed. She talked about adoption. But then she changed her mind. Said she couldn't bear to part with you. The pieces began to click into place, forming a terrifying mosaic. Sharon's possessiveness, her suffocating love, her desperate need for control, it all stemmed from that early fear of loss. But there was still a missing piece, a gaping hole in the narrative. The abortion. How did that fit in? I pressed my grandmother for more details, but she became evasive, clearly uncomfortable. It's all in the past, dear. Your mother loves you. That's all that matters. But it wasn't all that mattered. Not anymore. I thanked her, my mind racing. I knew with a chilling certainty that the truth was buried deep, and Sharon was the only one who held the key. I had to confront her again, but this time I would be prepared. I would not let her manipulate me. I would not let her win. I decided to visit my mother in her small Midwest town, alone this time. I needed answers, and I knew she wouldn't give them to me with Ethan present. The drive was long, filled with a mix of dread and grim determination. When I arrived, Sharon greeted me with a forced smile, her eyes weary. She knew why I was there. We sat in her meticulously clean living room, the silence heavy between us. I laid out my cards, recounting my grandmother's words, the fragmented memories, the gnawing suspicion. What happened, Mom? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What really happened when I was 16? Sharon's facade crumbled. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they felt different. Not the manipulative tears of a spoiled child, but the genuine anguish of a woman cornered. She confessed, her voice raw with emotion, that she had never truly let go of the fear of losing me. When I became pregnant at 16, she panicked. She saw her own youth, her own struggles as a single mother reflected my situation. She couldn't bear the thought of me repeating her mistakes, of me being tied down, losing my potential. She had concocted the story of the abortion, convincing me it was for my own good, to ensure I would go to college, build a life for myself, a life she believed she had been denied. But the baby, Mom? I pressed, my heart pounding. What happened to the baby? She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I couldn't go through with it, Chloe. I couldn't. I told the clinic I had changed my mind. I gave the baby up for adoption. My world tilted on its axis. Not an abortion, an adoption. A child, my child, was out there somewhere. All these years, I had mourned a loss that wasn't a loss, but a separation. The relief was immense, a tidal wave washing over me, but it was quickly followed by a fresh wave of anger. She had lied to me. 4 years. She'd stolen my choice, my knowledge, my connection to my own child. Why, Mom? Why didn't you tell me? I cried, the the tears finally flowing freely. "How could you keep this from me?" She looked at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I was scared, Chloe. Scared you would hate me. Scared you would leave me. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting us." Her words were a flimsy excuse, a desperate attempt to justify the unforgivable. But beneath the anger, a flicker of something else stirred within me. A profound sadness for the woman who had been so consumed by her own fears that she had inflicted such pain on her daughter. I spent the rest of the day with her, piecing together the fragments of the past. She told me about the adoption agency, the closed adoption, the limited information she had been given about the adoptive family. A girl. My baby was a girl. She'd been adopted by a loving couple in a neighboring state. Sharon had kept a small worn photo of her, a tiny pixelated image of a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. She had never dared to look for her, too afraid of what she might find, too afraid of shattering the fragile peace she had constructed around her lie. Leaving her house, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The anger was still there, a burning ember in my chest, but it was tempered by a sense of liberation. The truth, however painful, had set me free. I called Ethan, my voice shaking as I recounted everything. He listened in stunned silence. Then, after a long pause, he said, "We'll find her, Chloe. We'll find our daughter." His unwavering support was a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of despair. We had a child out there, a daughter we never knew existed, and we would do everything in our power to find her. It's strange how these dark family secrets connect us. If this story is getting under your skin, subscribe for more real family exposés. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, the shame, the grief, the silent suffering, it had all been built on a lie. My mother, the woman who claimed to love me more than anything, had orchestrated a deception so profound it had altered the course of my life. The abortion, the phantom pain, the years of therapy trying to reconcile with a decision I thought I had made under duress. It was all a cruel mirage. My child was alive. My daughter was out there. The realization was both a balm and a fresh wound, healing one scar while tearing open another. I returned to New York, the truth a heavy weight in my heart, but also a beacon of hope. Ethan was waiting, his face etched with concern. I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of emotion. He held me, his embrace a silent promise of unwavering support. "We'll find her, Chloe," he repeated, his voice firm. "We'll find our daughter." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations, adoption agency searches, and countless dead ends. The closed adoption system was a labyrinth designed to protect the privacy of all parties involved. But we were relentless. We hired a private investigator, a kind, tenacious woman named Sarah, who specialized in adoption searches. She delved into old records, cross-referenced databases, and followed every lead, no matter how small. The process was agonizingly slow, each day a test of our patience and resolve. But the thought of Lily, our Lily, and the daughter we had yet to meet, fueled our determination. Then, one afternoon, Sarah called. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. "I found her, Chloe. I found your daughter." My breath hitched. The world seemed to stop. "Her name is Emma. She's 15 years old. She lives in Pennsylvania." The details were sparse, but they were enough. A name, an age, a location, a life. The drive to Pennsylvania was a blur. Ethan and I held hands, a silent prayer passing between us. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation and fear. What would she be like? Would she hate me? Would she understand? All the questions, all the anxieties swirled in my mind, a chaotic symphony of emotions. We pulled up to a modest house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. A girl was sitting on the porch swing, engrossed in a book, her long dark hair falling over her face. My breath caught in my throat. She looked so much like me. The same delicate features, the same thoughtful expression. My daughter. We walked up the path, each step feeling like a mile. The girl looked up, her eyes, the same shade of hazel as mine, widening in surprise. Sarah stepped forward, her voice gentle. "Emma, this is Chloe and Ethan. They're your birth parents." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Emma's book fell from her lap, landing with a soft thud on the porch. Her gaze flickered between me and Ethan, a mixture of shock, confusion, and a flicker of something else, recognition. My birth parents?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, honey, I'm your mom." I reached out, my hand trembling, wanting to touch her, to embrace her, to bridge the chasm of 15 years. But I held back, respecting her space, her shock. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm and reassuring. "We've been looking for you for a long time, Emma. We never stopped." Emma's adoptive parents, a kind-faced couple, emerged from the house, their expressions a mix of apprehension and understanding. They had known this day might come, had prepared Emma for it. They loved her, nurtured her, given her a stable, loving home. And for that, I would be eternally grateful. We spent hours talking, sharing stories, piecing together the puzzle of our lives. Emma was a bright, articulate girl with a passion for literature and a quiet strength that belied her age. She had questions, so many questions, and we answered them as honestly as we could, carefully navigating the delicate balance between truth and pain. As I looked at Emma, a profound shift occurred within me. The years of anger, resentment, and victimhood began to recede, replaced by a fierce, protective love. My mother's deception, while unforgivable, had inadvertently led me to this moment, to this incredible, unexpected reunion. I was no longer just Chloe, the woman haunted by her past. I was Chloe, the mother of 2 daughters, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged stronger, more resilient. The transformation was complete. I'd found my voice, my strength, my purpose, but the journey wasn't over. There was one more confrontation I needed to face. I called Sharon, my voice steady, devoid of the fear and hesitation that had once plagued me. "Mom, I know everything," I said, the words a steel blade cutting through years of lies. "I know about Emma. I know you lied to me." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a choked gasp. "Chloe? I can explain." Her voice was weak, her usual bravado gone. "There's nothing to explain, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "You stole 15 years of my life. You stole 15 years of Emma's life. And you stole 15 years of Lily's life, a sister she never knew she had." She began to cry, a torrent of sobs and apologies, but they felt hollow, performative. "I did it for you, Chloe. I thought I was protecting you." I listened, unmoved. The emotional manipulation that had once held me captive now had no power over me. "No," I said, my voice filled with a quiet authority. "You did it for yourself. You did it because you were afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being alone." The truth, spoken aloud, was a powerful weapon, disarming her completely. "I'm not going to cut you out of my life completely, Mom," I continued, my voice softening slightly. "But things are going to be different. You will not undermine my parenting. You will not manipulate me. And you will respect my boundaries. If you can't do that, then I can't have you in my life or in my daughter's lives." It was the hardest conversation I had ever had, but it was also the most liberating. I had finally taken back control, not just of my life, but of my narrative. The power dynamics had shifted. I was no longer the child, and she was no longer the all-powerful mother. This moment shattered everything I knew. If you're feeling this shock too, hit like. It helps uncover more hidden family truths. The immediate aftermath of Emma's discovery was a delicate dance of emotions. Joy, relief, guilt, and a profound sense of the unknown swirled around us. Emma, a bright and perceptive teenager, handled the news with a maturity that belied her years. Her adopted parents, the Millers, were incredibly supportive, understanding the profound impact this reunion would have on everyone involved. They'd always been open with Emma about her adoption, and while the details of her birth mother's deception were shocking, they navigated the complexities with grace and compassion. We spent the next few days in a whirlwind of conversations, sharing stories, looking at old photographs, and slowly, tentatively, building the foundation of a new family. Lily, at 2 years old, was too young to understand the gravity of the situation, but she instinctively gravitated towards Emma, her new older sister. It was heartwarming to watch them interact, Lily's innocent giggles filling the space that had once been occupied by my unspoken grief. Ethan was my anchor, his steady presence and unwavering love a constant source of strength. He embraced Emma as his own, his eyes shining with a pride that mirrored my own. We were a family, larger and more complex than we had ever imagined, but undeniably whole. My relationship with Sharon, however, remained a raw wound. After our phone call, she had retreated into a silence that was both a relief and a new form of torment. I had set my boundaries, and she, for the first time, seemed to respect them. But the emotional scars ran deep. I knew that true reconciliation, if it were ever possible, would be a long and arduous journey, one that I wasn't sure I was ready to embark on. For now, I focused on my daughters, on healing myself, and on building a future free from the shadows of the past. The decision to search for Emma had opened a new chapter in our lives, one filled with both challenges and immense rewards. We learned about Emma's life, her passions, her dreams. She was a talented artist, a budding writer, and a fiercely independent spirit. We discovered shared interests, uncanny similarities in our mannerisms, and a deep, unspoken connection that transcended the years of separation. It was as if a missing piece of my soul had finally been returned. But the journey wasn't without its difficulties. Emma had her own questions, her own pain to process. She grappled with the knowledge that her birth mother had lied, that her early life had been shrouded in deception. We sought family counseling, a safe space where we could all express our feelings, process our trauma, and learn to navigate the complexities of our newly formed family dynamic. It was a challenging process, but it was also incredibly cathartic, allowing us to confront our pain and move towards healing. I also realized that my own healing was far from complete. The years of Sharon's manipulation had left me with a deep-seated fear of control, a constant need to prove my independence. I sought therapy, working through the trauma of my past, learning to trust my own instincts, and to embrace the messy, imperfect reality of motherhood. I learned that true strength wasn't about being perfect, but about being resilient, about picking myself up after every fall, and about loving myself, flaws and all. Ethan and I renewed our vows, a quiet ceremony that symbolized our renewed commitment to each other and to our expanded family. We stood on the beach, the waves crashing against the shore, a metaphor for the storms we had weathered and the calm we had found. Lily, in a tiny white dress, threw flower petals, and Emma, her eyes shining, stood beside us, a testament to the power of love and resilience. It was a moment of profound joy, a celebration of new beginnings. Our life became a beautiful, chaotic tapestry woven with threads of laughter, tears, and unwavering love. Emma decided to attend college in New York, a decision that brought her closer to us and allowed her to pursue her artistic dreams. She and Lily developed an unbreakable bond, a sisterhood forged in the crucible of shared history. We celebrated holidays, birthdays, and countless small victories, each moment a testament to the family we had built, not by blood alone, but by choice, by love, and by an unyielding commitment to each other. Sharon remained on the periphery of our lives. She sent occasional cards, small gifts for the girls, and polite, almost formal emails. I responded with equal politeness, maintaining a respectful distance. The intense emotional connection we once shared had been severed, replaced by a fragile truce. I had learned that some relationships, however deeply rooted, could never be fully healed. But I had also learned that I could choose my family, that I could create a life filled with love and support, even if it meant letting go of the past. I often thought about the woman I had been, the terrified teenager who had believed her mother's lie. I had come so far, endured so much, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I was a mother, a wife, a woman who had found her voice and her truth. And as I watched my daughters play, their laughter echoing through our home, I knew that every struggle, every tear, every moment of pain had been worth it. I had broken the cycle, had refused to let the past define my future. I had chosen love over fear, truth over deception, and in doing so, I had finally found my own freedom. I still lie awake wondering, what would you have done when they tried to control your body? Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more shocking family revelations.